Thank you.
Okay. So what is business's basic response to the budget that was tabled today?
Well, we did expect a tough budget. We did expect the minister to make far-reaching announcements about what government was going to do to reduce expenditure, because you see the crux of our problem in this country, the economy is not growing and government is spending more money than it is collecting, which is known as the budget deficit. And for as long as government continues to spend more than taxes it's collecting, we will always have this situation where there's just so much pressure on the budget every year. And we expected government to say these are the steps that it will take to reduce expenditure. But we know that there are more pressures coming. There are wage negotiations coming with the unions very soon, and that's going to put more strain on the state. And unfortunately, the one thing that's coming out very clear today is that ordinary South Africans are going to feel the pain through the 1% increase in VAT. And we welcome the idea that there'll be zero rating of some of the foodstuffs, especially that are consumed by the poorest of the poor. But essentially, every South African is going to have to pay 1% more on VAT. But we expected government to demonstrate in greater terms. These are the steps that will be taken to reduce government expenditure. And I don't think that picture came out very clearly today. Some indications were that, in fact, government is introducing other measures to increase revenue, increasing taxes for some of the sectors of the economy, but it did not go far enough.
From businesses' perspective, do you think government did enough in terms of its packages of incentives, to promote economic growth?
Not enough. Some interesting ideas came forth, but our view is that it's one thing for government to come with incentives, but it's something else for government to sit down with key players in the economy to say what can we do together so that government or business can become a partner with government and say these are the steps that you need to take to grow this economy. And clearly there are some steps that have already been taken which we welcome. For example, sending the mining minister in the Chamber of Mine back to the negotiating table. It's just one classical example that if you take 1 or 2 or 3 steps in consultation with the industry, you're going to see changes. You're going to see some growth in the economy. At the moment, we have a situation where government and business are still working too far apart from each other, and would like to see greater cooperation.
Well, last week in President Ramaphosa's SONA address, he talked about business initiatives, the business-led 1.4 billion rand fund to promote small business and so on. That was also mentioned. To what extent is BLSA going to be involved in these learnerships for 1 million people over the next 3 years?
That yes initiative, the Minister Mted also mentioned it, which is a youth employment scheme, which is going to be creating work opportunities for up to 1 million youngsters around the country. But part of the delay at this stage is that government is not yet come to the party by reformulating the regulations to make sure that some of the companies that are participating in the scheme can get some BE points and in their scorecards, etc., etc. So business is almost ready to implement the scheme, but government has not come to the party to say these are the changes that we're going to put in place. The other big initiative by business is called the SME Fund, which is Small to Medium Enterprises Fund, where business has put aside 1.5 billion rands, and the expectation was that government was going to match that fund so that we can actually support small to medium enterprises through various initiatives and encouraging entrepreneurship. But that program is moving, and we're seeing very little participation from government, which underscores the point that there's a need for government not just to say, but to be committed and be seen to be working with business to make sure that some of these projects can be implemented, because business is almost ready for implementation.
Well, let's hope that that communication is solidified. And then just lastly, do you think we've managed to escape the machete of Moody's with this budget today?
Well, we've got to digest the speech and see in greater detail what does it mean. But I do expect the rating agencies are going to have some reservations about the fact that the budget did not go far enough about steps that need to be taken. For example, the minister talked about the need for some of the SOEs to actually start exploring possibilities of actually selling off some of their assets. And I don't think that we've got a very clear commitment to say this is what we are going to do with Telkom, Eskom, SAA, to make sure that we begin to see some private sector investment into those companies to reduce the burden on the state coffers. So I think that the rating agencies would have expected something more definitive to say, as government, this is what we're going to do with SAA. We're going to invite a private equity player to make sure that they co-invest with us to reduce the burden on the taxpayer.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Themba Maseko, Director of Communications at Business Leadership South Africa, just giving us his take on the budget. And unfortunately, the Minister was supposed to come and talk to us, but he couldn't make it. But we've now come to the end of our special broadcast.